Hey everyone, welcome back to Falcons Central Radio Show on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. My name is Aaron Freeman, founder of FalFans.com. I'm joined by my co-host Scott Karasik, who covers the Falcons for Pro Football Spot. This week we are joined by Score Atlanta's Craig Sager Jr. We are going to be talking about the Atlanta Falcons' Week 2 win over the New York Giants, as well as previewing their Week 3 matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. And as usual, we will be answering your mailbag questions at the end of the show. So, Craig, this is Craig's first time on the show, so welcome to the show, Craig.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, let's talk about this win against the Giants. It looked a little rough for a little bit, and then it turned out okay. The Falcons mounted another comeback late in the game. But what were your guys' biggest takeaways from the game and sort of the Falcons' performance?
Tevin Coleman is vital. That offensive line does not look as good run blocking without him in there. Not at all.
I mean, I agree with that. I was definitely impressed with Tevin Coleman. What stuck out to me, though, 15 targets, 13 catches. Julio Jones is playing on a level I've never seen. He's absolutely outstanding. Did it all. I mean, yeah, the deep ball wasn't exactly there the whole game, but it's just I don't know if I remember seeing a guy that's so important for an offense, and even when he wasn't getting the ball. I mean, Kyle Shanahan's never had a piece like that. You saw how open Jacob Tamme was on some of those plays. Julio's getting all the safety help over the top. He's still getting open. He's making ridiculous catches, and for him to get targeted 15 times and catch 13 balls, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, Julio's the man. As long as he keeps getting the football, good things happen for the Falcons offense. But I thought it was interesting that we saw a couple of guys step up this week, because I think that was going to be the big concern against the Giants, just because the Giants had a little bit of success last year against Julio. I think he still had 100 yards, but it was one of those things where he didn't make any big plays or really do anything after the catch. And probably for the most part in the game until that big bomb at the end of the game, you could say the same thing. They had done a pretty good job containing him, even though Julio's going to get his numbers. But I did like that we saw Hankerson make some plays, Tamme made some plays, Devontae made some nice runs in the fourth quarter to sort of keep the chains rolling and get the Falcons in the scoring position a couple of times to win in the end. So I like the fact that we had certain guys step up, especially in light that Roddy didn't really probably have one of his worst games of his career, at least from a production standpoint. 1 target, 0 catches. So it was nice to see the supporting cast step up and help the team out in the end, because they really needed them.
Yeah, and talk about a team. What's unbelievable to me is that was the first true Falcons road win against a non-division team in 1,002 days. You go back, they didn't win a single road game against a non-division team last year. 2013, the only one they won was against the Buffalo Bills in a dome game. I'm sorry, but that's not a true road win. When you play the Buffalo Bills and put them inside in Toronto, so their last win against a non-division team was in Detroit in 2012. For this new coaching staff, yeah, they didn't look perfect. Yeah, they went down by 10 points, but for them to come in on a short week after a Monday night opener, go on the road and find a way to win that game, I thought it was huge. And, I mean, the thing about it is there were mistakes, but those are mistakes that a brand new staff can look at and hopefully fix. So I think overall, I mean, there's still things that should be addressed, but you got to be happy for them to go on the road a short week and pull that one out.
Yeah, I wasn't complaining at all about them winning the game. I was shocked that a couple things. I was shocked that Bierman showed up, but he wasn't playing strong side linebacker but like 2 plays, because they had Aaron's boy, Nate Stupar, playing
Stoop life.
Strong side linebacker, and he looked good. He looked really good. I mean, he didn't look like Brooks Reed will probably look, but he looked competent in a spot where Bierman just didn't. And then Schofield got to play the role that Schofield's supposed to play, which is that rotational nickel guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I really didn't get a chance to look at, was just how well they rotated on the defensive line throughout that whole game, how they kept everyone fresh. And honestly, I think it stacks up well for this team this year because there's not really a lot of strong running going on. And if they can keep getting those third and long situations and keep limiting these guys somewhat in the run game, I mean, they're going to have a lot more success. Because I think that the secondary is one of the strengths of the team. So I don't see any team where you say, oh my gosh, they're going to run all over us. Even Seattle's having real problems running the ball this year. So I think that stacks up well. I mean, there's some teams that can come in and pound the rock. I know Dallas has an incredible offensive line we'll probably talk about, but overall, I'm not scared so much on opposing offenses as I was last year. I still don't think the Falcons' defense is where it's going to be by the end of the year, but no offenses in the NFC are really scaring me right now.
Yeah, this week is going to be a big test, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but Dallas is going to be one of those teams that's going to want to come in and pound the rock. And so we'll get to see this, opponent that really wants to be a run-first team this week. We'll get to see that run defense step up. But I'm very optimistic that, those guys will be able to step up, especially with Stupar now, playing that strong side linebacker spot and looking pretty solid there. And, the Falcons sort of doing a lot more rotating with their defensive line than probably it looked like they were going to do in the preseason. We've seen a lot of Grady Jarrett in pass rushing situations, and he's looked pretty good so far. And it's one of those things where, the front seven was probably one of the weaker front sevens in the NFL last year, and it seems like it's done a complete 180. I won't go as far as to say it's one of the best in the NFL, but it's definitely one of the better ones we've had in Atlanta in a very long time. So it definitely is one that I feel confident that they can stand up against most opposing teams' running games and fronts. And, this Dallas game is going to be another test to prove that.
I just want to add, I thought Jonathan Babin has been outstanding too. And I think this defense is really tailor-made for his type of skills, leaving him more of a one-gap situation, just penetrate the backfield. He's doing a great job on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had Charles McDonald on last week, and he was, very complimentary of Vic Beasley on this show. And then he didn't hit Charles's benchmark of 2 sacks in the game, but he did get his first NFL sack. He was probably one of the better pass rushers in the game. Obviously, Corey Bierman had the big game-changing hit on Eli Manning, but Beasley was consistently whipping up on the Giants' left tackle, Eric Flowers, at the beginning of the game, and then when he got hurt, Justin Pugh. And so what were your guys' thoughts on Beasley's performance, and did he live up to sort of the expectations that a lot of people had that he would have a big game?
Yeah, I mean, he had 2 holding calls called against the left tackle on passing plays that was him getting a sack, in my view. It's a 10-yard loss for the offense. It's a loss of down. It's a horrible mistake. And if you can push the offense back 10 yards due to them holding you because you just destroyed them, yeah, I'll take that all day. He probably would have had 3 sacks if there were no penalties on those 2 plays. I mean, he was bearing down on Eli on both of them. On one of them, Flowers was grabbing him from behind, like, oh crap, Eli's about to get destroyed if I don't do this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the improvement from the first week to the second week, it was just noticeable. He had a much bigger presence, and I think what he does so well is just watching him. Yeah, some of the plays he wasn't getting sacks, but he would just rush outside, get back there so fast. Eli had no chance behind him. He had to step up, and that just it makes him more crowded in front of him. It disrupts some of the throws, and I thought the interior lineman fed off it. I thought it really was just a whole key. So if he can keep getting back there by the time the quarterback drops back, I mean, that's huge. I thought his speed looked great, and I thought he had a much, much better game.
Craig, did you see, or Scott, did you see anybody else that you wanted to mention that stood out to you against the Giants?
I think Justin Durant's been playing great. I think he definitely stood out week 1, and we're seeing what a downhill explosive tackler looks like at the linebacker position. I really like his style of play, and I think he just put together his second straight great game.
And another one for me would be Patrick DeMarco, offensive linebacker. He did a great job. He did a great job. He was destroying guys off the snap, opening holes. The only critique that I have is I wish he would have not fallen down right after catching the ball on that 19-yard gain, because he probably could have had another 10, 15 yards had he just kept his feet under him.
Okay. Well, you said a lot of positive things about some of the stronger performances in the Giants game, so let's briefly talk about some of the less than stellar performances. I already mentioned Roddy White, not a great game for him. Other guys that I thought didn't have a great game, Ricardo Allen missed that tackle on that Odell Beckham touchdown. Then basically got benched for a series because I guess, according to him, he had to get calmed down for, because he was still dwelling on that misplay. Robert Alford, suffered a lot of abuse at the hands of Falcon fans on Twitter. I think his poor performance is a little overrated by a lot of people. I thought, considering what Odell Beckham did to him last year, other than a couple of plays here and there, I thought Robert Alford really stepped up and rose for the challenge of covering Odell Beckham. Obviously, Beckham got the better of him for a good chunk of the game, mostly the first half. But I thought Alford played fairly well, and I don't really have as many complaints as a lot of people did on Sunday with the fact that the Falcons weren't really shadowing Trufant over there. I think it was a great test for Robert Alford, and I think moving forward, Dan Quinn's going to have a lot more confidence in him going forward because, let's face it, with Des Bryant being injured, he's really not going to face another receiver on Odell Beckham's level for the rest of the season. So I feel fairly confident that Robert Alford's going to be just okay. But what were your thoughts on some of those guys or anybody else that you thought didn't have the best game against the Giants?
I mean, Alford didn't have the best game, but you can't really fault him for that going against ODB. He shouldn't be going against Odell Beckham. I didn't think Claiborne had a great game against the run. He was really missing his run fits. Babineau, same thing. I thought Babineau had some issues with his run fits as well. When they were putting the nickel defense out and they had those two guys right in the middle, they were checking into runs. And while it may not show on the stat sheet, you could see it up front that they were getting ready and getting primed for that big run just by calling them. And then Vereen broke that big, or not Vereen, Andre Williams broke that big one. So, I mean, if Vereen had better vision, they probably would have had 3-4 big runs.
I don't have much bad things to say about this guy, but, I mean, he got injured, Paul Warlow, with that calf, and just when he came back, he had trouble just getting settled back into the speed of the game. So I know he was injured on the play, but, I mean, yeah, he definitely had trouble getting back into things once he came back on the field and finished with just 2 tackles. So I'd like to see him heal up this week and play a much better game.
Agreed.
Yeah. Not a whole lot of negatives. Just, a couple of guys here and there didn't have their best performances, but it's nothing to sort of get bent out of shape with, replacing guys here and there. It's just one of those, like, I've heard a lot of talk with people saying Alford should be benched and maybe we should give Jalen Collins a start at the starting spot, and I think that's kind of ridiculous at this point.
I don't know about that.
Collins is not ready.
No.
Collins isn't close to ready.
They watched the preseason. Yeah, he's got some growing to do.
Yeah. I'm a lot more concerned about Phillip Adams right now than I am Robert Alford, but understandably because, Phillip Adams is a journeyman player. He's been playing a lot in the slot, probably a lot more than we sort of expected based off how the Falcons were deploying their corners in the preseason. But it's one of those things where I don't think Phillip Adams has played poorly. I mean, Odell Beckham beat him a couple of times. But, yeah, if you had asked me before the game if Phillip Adams is only going to get beat by Odell Beckham like 2 or 3 times, would you take that? I'd be like, yeah, sure. That's fine for what Phillip Adams is. But it's one of those things where I think people are probably because of the lingering resentment in the back of their head from the last couple of seasons, they're a little too quick to pull the plug on some of these guys. Early in the season, a lot of fans are saying this guy should be benched, that guy should be benched, and whatnot. And it's just like, let's let these things play out. This team is not at where it's going to be at the end of the season, particularly on the offensive line. It's still new. The defense is still gelling. It's one of those things where I think people are a little too quick to hit the panic button and start talking about replacing guys. Let's see what these guys can do for at least a month before we start really talking about replacing anybody.
Agreed.
All right, guys, you got anything else you want to say about the Giants game, or you ready to move on to this Cowboys talk?
Let's move to the Cowboys. I'm tired of dwelling on the past. When it was 24 hours after a victory, we're good to go. Let's see the next team.
All right. So obviously the big thing with the Cowboys is they have a lot of injuries to a lot of good players. Tony Romo is now on their short-term IR, so he's not going to be back till week 11, I think. Des Bryant is nicked up. No one knows exactly when he's going to be back, but it's certainly not going to be this week. Obviously, Jason Witten suffering some injuries, even though there's sort of reports coming out. I haven't heard anything in the last couple of hours, but at least this morning there wasn't talk that he wasn't they haven't definitely ruled him out for this week. But even if he plays, he's definitely not going to be 100%. Greg Hardy's still on suspension. I believe Randy Gregory has already been declared out for this game, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure there's a couple of injuries that I'm forgetting, just basically because everybody that's good on the Cowboys is in the training room at this point. So I guess my question is this a game that Falcons should be overlooking, or at least obviously the team won't overlook them, but should fans? I've heard from a lot of fans that the Cowboys are a pushover. Do you guys feel with all their injuries that they are now a pushover?
No team in the NFL is a pushover.
I mean, I was shocked that so many people, once Romo got injured, just completely. I mean, obviously not Cowboys fans, but I mean they were beating the Eagles, and everyone, the season's over. The season's over. They're 2-0. If they were 0-2 and all those guys are injured, I'd say the season's over. But they still got a lot to play for, and they still have one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in the league. And that's what this team is really going to try to rally around. They're going to try to keep the ball on the offensive side, just pound it. Probably be more aggressive taking shots, and we'll see. But with that offensive line, I mean, I still think they can have a lot of success.
Yeah, and their defense has played a lot better than I certainly thought they would this early in the season. Sean Lee's been playing outstanding. Their run defense, that held the Eagles to 7 yards rushing, something ridiculous like that. That's definitely going to pad your stats by years in when we talk about average run yards allowed. The cornerbacks have done a lot better job than I would have predicted going into the season with Brandon Carr and Mo Claiborne, two guys that have really underachieved since they've been there. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, and I agree with you, Craig. Like, I think with that offensive line, if basically they can win in the line of scrimmage, and any Falcon fan knows that, when the Falcons get beat on the line of scrimmage, they do tend to struggle. If the Cowboys can, just dominate in the trenches, then they have every reason to think that they have a legitimate shot of beating the Falcons, even if, Brandon Weeden is their quarterback. I mean, if all he's got to do is hand the ball off 30 times and, just throw it on 3rd and short to Cole Beasley or Jason Witten or Gavin Escobar, then that's a formula that the Cowboys can certainly take advantage of, especially if the Falcons aren't playing their A game on the road. And we know, looking at this Giants game, that they tend to, in past history, that they tend to start a little slower on the road than they do at home. So that's sort of the way I think the Cowboys will plan to attack it. But obviously it'll be on the Falcons to sort of get them out of that, get some points early, make them have to throw with Brandon Weeden as opposed to handing the ball off, and, hopefully get some turnovers and whatnot to help out the offense if they get off to a slow start this week. So I don't think the Cowboys are a pushover, but I do certainly think the Falcons should be favored in this game.
The Cowboys are a pushover, but when you're without your starting tight end, your starting quarterback, your starting number 1 receiver, I mean, Brandon Weeden's your starter this week. It doesn't look promising on offense. No matter how good their offensive line is, they still haven't solved who their running back is. Joseph Randall is just okay. He hasn't looked like the guy that DeMarco Murray is. So I guess, Aaron, you kind of are right about the whole running backs do have to have vision and talent. but you can't just throw any running back behind a good offensive line and expect him to be good. But I don't know if the Cowboys have the luck, if you will, to come back and win this week.
Yeah. I would probably give the Cowboys a better chance if Brandon Whedon wasn't their quarterback, but I don't know how you feel about Brandon Whedon, correct? But I have a very, very low opinion of him, and I think he's probably in the running for, at least as we sit here today, the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. So I hope the Falcons defense doesn't look bad against Brandon Whedon. So
yeah, it's one thing to come in and throw a touchdown late. It's another to start a football game in the NFL, and that's going to be a real big challenge for him is trying to play 4 quarters. So we'll see. I definitely wouldn't pick the Cowboys this week. I think the Falcons have a chance to really show what they're about on the defensive side of the ball, play aggressive, and really attack the run and get them in the third and long situations. I mean, right now they're ranked 9th in the league in run defense. We played 2 mediocre teams running the ball, 80 yards per game. I think this is going to be a big test because Dallas is going to have to rely on that, and we'll see how they do.
So obviously we saw in week 1 where Julio went off against the Eagles secondary and basically until those holding calls in the third quarter, he was virtually unstoppable, and the Falcons offense looked pretty unstoppable. Last week against the Giants, he didn't have as brilliant a start. He got his catches, but he didn't have the sort of big game-changing plays early in that game until late. Do you see this Cowboys secondary? I think based off of how the Cowboys use their corners, Mo Claiborne will probably see the majority of snaps against Julio. Do you feel like this is going to be another big sort of a performance for Julio that's more like week 1 or closer to week 2?
Scott, you want to take the one?
I mean, I think Julio's going to have a ridiculous performance this week. I just don't see a cornerback on that Dallas roster that can handle him.
Yeah, I definitely don't think defensives have figured it out yet. I think we're going to see more new things this week too. I mean, we've seen them try to roll over the safety, do this, do that, but it hasn't worked. So until someone comes up with something else, which I think if they put too much attention, we saw what happened. Jacob Tamme, Leonard Hakerson, all those other guys. Matt Ryan's throwing accurate passes. He's connecting with those guys at the same rate. I think Tamme was like, how many catches did he have? Like 8 or 9 on like 11 targets. So, and we've got a lot of weapons to throw the ball to. So I really don't think you can. I think the only thing holding back Julio is, I mean, the wear and tear of a full season. I mean, can he stay completely healthy this whole time? Are they going to want to try to protect him a little bit? But other than that, I mean, he's unstoppable.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be another big game. Double-digit catches, probably 150-plus yards, probably at least 1, if not 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, there's going to be if for you guys who have Julio on your fantasy team, you know who you are. Probably a good idea to start him this week. That's what I will say.
Yeah, I mean, the only way to really stop him is getting pressure on Matt Ryan. I mean, if you give him time and Julio Jones does that comeback, he's so fast, he's going to push back. Everyone's going to bail out thinking because he can beat him deep, and then he's just going to stop on that comeback route. He's so big and physical. It's just impossible to stop if Matt Ryan has time.
Julio's on pace for 176 yards, or 176 catches, 2,200 yards, and 16 touchdowns this year. That's a Madden pace. That's not a real-life pace.
Yeah, it will be interesting, especially with all the injuries to the receivers this year. I mean, just what type of season he can put together. Obviously, Antonio Brown, I think, is the only guy that's going to come close to him in yardage.
Antonio Brown might beat him in yardage. I don't know if he beats him in touchdowns or catches, though, because Brown's more of that big play threat.
Yep.
Yeah, only thing that's stopping Julio is basically an injury because no defense has been able to do it so far, at least for a full game. So how do you guys? Let's flip it over to the other side. And with our secondary matching up against Cowboys, obviously not having Des Bryant is a huge, huge relief. for the Falcons defense because it was probably going to be Alford matched up with him probably a little bit more unless, Dan Quinn decided that he was going to start shadowing this week with Trufant. But now it probably seems like, based off of how, Beasley usually plays, Cole Beasley pretty much is exclusively a slot receiver, so he'll face Phillip Adams. Terrence Williams is a good deep threat, but he doesn't really, he's not that sort of every down chain mover. He'll be probably matched up with Trufant a lot. Alford's going to be going up against my boy from Pitt, Devin Street, who's their third wide receiver now that Bryant's injured. Do you feel like, I look at these matchups and I'm the only one I'm a little concerned about is maybe Adams doesn't have the quickness to handle Beasley, because they basically use Beasley a lot like Wes Welker, just run 5 yards and run around and get open. So that's probably the one matchup offensively that does give me a little pause. But how do you guys feel about the Falcons dealing with the Cowboys receivers on the occasions when they aren't handing the ball off to a running back?
I mean, if Witten's not healthy this week, they're more or less screwed. Because I hate to say it, but Devin Street doesn't scare me. No offense to Aaron. I know he's a Pitt guy.
Yeah, he's not on that level yet.
Terrence Williams is a solid receiver, but when you put him against arguably the best cornerback in the league, I mean, I'm not expecting a great game. I think you could see a lot of coverage sacks this week. A lot of coverage sacks.
I agree. This receiving core, it doesn't scare me. They get beat deep, and that's the whole mantra of this defense. Don't get beat deep. And honestly, even if these guys do get beat deep, I don't know if the throw is going to be there with Brandon Weeden. So I'm not worried at all. I mean, for them to connect on the big plays this week, it's going to have to be a perfect pass, which is going to be tough. And they're going to have to get beat against a defense that is made to not get beat deep. I think they're just going to keep the plays in front of them, force those short throws, just play aggressive defense. I think it's a great matchup for the secondary this week.
Okay. How do you feel about the Falcons' D-line going up against the Cowboys' offensive line? I know based off of, the Cowboys like to use a lot of 12 personnel, with 2 tight ends and 1 running back. They like to run out of that. So if Witten plays, it'll probably be Witten and Escobar. I don't know who the third string, maybe James Hanna. I don't know if he's still there. But obviously the Cowboys are going to want to win that battle, and we'll probably see a lot of the Falcons' base defense with Hageman and Tyson Jackson and Paul Solai than we have in some of these recent games if the Cowboys are committed to the run. Do you guys feel good about how our big D-line matches up against their offensive line and their running game?
I think the big defensive line will be fine. I mean, you're not going to get a great run defense, but you're going to get something that's better than what they've been doing, than what the Cowboys have been seeing. I mean, they haven't seen a defensive line as big and as powerful as the Falcons yet, at least not their big unit. Because I think they've seen Philly and New York. I'm just not impressed.
Yeah, I mean, I think until the Cowboys start passing the ball well this game, I think the Falcons can really just load up the box and focus on stopping the run, use the speed, use the rotation, use the linebackers to come in there and fill the gap. So I think in order for us to see the Cowboys' offensive line at what they do best, they're going to have to be able to pass the ball. They're going to have to be able to keep the Falcons' defense somewhat on their heels and respecting the long ball, because other than that, I mean, really the Dallas offensive line, I don't think they're going to be able to just power their way through a defense that isn't scared with the pass. So, and that's obviously basic football, but they're going to have good quarterback play to win this game. Otherwise, it's not going to matter. They won't even be able to run the ball because the Falcons know what they're going to do, and no receiver really scares them.
So it sounds like to me, Craig, you feel sort of what I feel, which is basically the Falcons' worst enemy in this game is probably themselves. So they basically have to beat themselves if there's really a chance that the Cowboys can sort of overcome them. They have to basically go into this game, say, oh, the Cowboys, all the good players are injured, not take it seriously, get off to a slow start. Matt Ryan throws a couple of picks, or somebody turns the ball over early in the game. Gifts wrap the Cowboys, 7 or 10 or 14 points early in the game, and basically the Falcons are stuck climbing out of a hole for 4 quarters as opposed to 1 or 2 quarters at the end. Is that how you feel?
Absolutely. If the Falcons don't turn the ball over, I think they're just going to be able to control the game the whole time. And it's just Dallas doesn't have the defense to – no matter how good Dallas is able to run the ball, they don't have the defense to slow down the Falcons offensively if they come out with a good game plan and don't turn the ball over. So it's a bad matchup, and I really think the only thing that's stopping the Falcons, as you said, is themselves. Just protect the football, play aggressive on both sides of the ball, and I think they got it.
I agree. This could be a blowout if the Falcons execute properly and can start creating some turnovers on defense and Vic Beasley balls out against Tyron Smith. This could be a scary good game for the Falcons.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to seeing what the Falcons do, because I look at the Cowboys offensive line and I look at their left guard position, I look at their right tackle position as probably the only 2 things that we could call weaknesses up front. And we saw last week against the Giants, Beasley getting a lot more reps at the left defensive end spot in their nickel fronts. And so maybe the Falcons will be a little bit more willing to put Beasley up against Doug Free at right tackle as opposed to Tyron Smith. Or, maybe they can still stick with O'Brien Schofield. It doesn't really matter. But I'm looking forward to seeing if they can exploit that weakness in the left guard position. I hear that the Cowboys are probably going to start Leo Collins because Mackenzie Bernadou did not have a good game against the Eagles. So it'll be interesting because that'll be, I think, that's usually the side of the ball that Hageman plays and Claiborne plays. So that's going to be another interesting matchup to see how those guys do against, and see if the Falcons can actually get some pressure against one of the better offensive lines by exploiting those 2 weaknesses. All right, guys. You got anything else you want to talk about the Cowboys game, or you want to get in these mailbag questions?
A guy commented on our YouTube page, was talking about Lance Dunbar being the bigger trouble out of that entire Cowboys system because the Falcons have trouble with the move and the receiver and the shifty running backs.
Okay. That's a fair point. I think so. I'm not scared of any of their running backs, but I would probably agree that Dunbar is probably the scariest given the issues the Falcons have had with, quick backs like Sproles and Vereen the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, this is how observation right there. I mean, Sproles is just so hard to take down, and those are just guys you can't fall asleep defensively. You got to know where they are. You got to team tackle, and I thought they did an average job this week. I mean, the last couple of weeks on that, but it's not something they haven't seen.
Yeah. All right. Our first mailbag questions comes from Devontae Hughes at Cookie by Nature. He asks, when will the Falcons throw deep?
When the offensive line blocks for it.
It's interesting. I really think, I mean, Julio is the only deep threat on this team. I think that's why he's so important. And the Falcons don't really have that established run game yet. So I think that's why Julio is so important. If you can't throw the ball deep, defenses are completely different. They can just attack the backfield. You're not going to be able to run the ball if you can't throw the ball deep. And honestly, I think it's working to their advantage right now just having the deep threat and being able to pass to guys like Jacob Tamme and Leonard Hankerson over the middle and even Nick Williams. So they'll throw the ball deep to Julio. That's it. It's not going deep to anyone else.
Yeah. They had a couple of deep balls to Roddy in the first game off of play action. But you're right, it's generally going to be Julio. And I think they've done a consistent job of when they've seen cover one looks. They're like, oh, that's man-to-man on Julio. He's going to win that matchup. We're going to throw it up. Just go deep, Julio. And that big play at the end of the Giants game was pretty much exactly that. So I do think the Falcons will take advantage of it when it's there, when their play-action game is working, when they see those sort of one-on-one matchups on the outside with Julio. They'll take advantage of them. But, maybe we'll see a little bit more if Hester comes back this week, just because he's another guy that has speed to burn. And defenses, if they key too much on Julio, Hester can, fly right past you. So maybe we'll see a couple more deep balls to other receivers not named Julio Jones in these upcoming weeks. But basically, it's whenever the matchup favors Julio. So
we've seen both weeks. We've seen Matt Ryan come so close to completing that wheel route to Devontae Freeman. The first week is just a little underthrown. I don't think he knew how fast Freeman would be on there. And then last week they were close to connecting again. But Freeman's a guy that can fake that arrow route and maybe hit a home run ball like Anton Smith did the last couple of years. So I think that's something we might see too. It's not really a fade route, but it's a big deep ball play that I think the Falcons can execute eventually.
You only need one or two of those to hit, and then defenses start respecting it.
By the way, I think they do the NFC Offensive Players of the Week on Wednesday, right? Is that what it is?
I think so.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Is it? Who does it go to? Do you think Julio has it again? I mean, trying to figure it out because that was his first one ever last week. I don't know. Just watching him last game, it's just. If he didn't get it this week, I don't know who would have gotten it. Who played better than he did in the NFC last week?
I can't even anybody off the top of my head.
I mean, maybe Aaron Rodgers.
That'd be interesting. All right, just a random.
All right, our next question comes from @JoeB Tracy. He says, Roddy was targeted one time in 46 throws. Do you expect him to be more involved versus Dallas?
Yes, especially since Dallas doesn't have the cornerbacks that are as good as DRC or Amukamara.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll be targeted less. But, I mean, I was surprised. I mean, it was almost like you're watching the game and it didn't even come to your mind until the third quarter, like, you didn't even see him running his routes. Usually it's like, okay, why aren't you throwing to him? But he almost just went unnoticed. It looked like he wasn't even in the game. Like I had people asking, is he hurt? I'm like, no, he's been in there. They just haven't looked his way. I mean, they didn't really need to. It's just the Julio show, and I think some other guys got open. I don't think we see another game exactly like that. But at the same time, a lot of pressure is taken off of him with this new offensive system with Kyle Shanahan. I think he's going to have his games where he has 6 catches, 8 catches, and as long as he's staying healthy and isn't asked to do a lot at this point, I mean, that's all I can ask for is keeping him healthy this entire season because he's a guy that you can go to on those tough third downs, and he is one of the best. So I'm still confident in Roddy White. I think is one of those games.
Yeah. The last time Roddy was held without a catch was Week 13 of 2006. So odds are pretty high that he'll have at least one catch this week based off of that. He's basically had like 140 games since then or something ridiculous like that where he's caught a pass. So I didn't expect Roddy to have a huge game last week, but I did think he would probably get a couple of catches against the Giants secondary. I think that'll be the same this week. He'll probably get 4 or 5 catches, do his usual 50, 60 yards or something like that. Maybe he'll get, hopefully he'll get one of those big, 20-yard gains like he did in Week 1 against the Eagles off play action. So I think Roddy will definitely bounce back this week. All right, we got a bunch from @MattStars. His first one is any takeaways on Hageman's play, expecting a big leap in year 2.
I mean, he was already creating some pressure this past week. He's playing the run extremely well. He still has to get his pad level lower. But for the 25, 30 snaps they're playing him every week, I mean, you can't ask for more. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's doing his job. I mean, yeah, would I love to see him get a sack? Of course. But he's hit the quarterback a couple times. He's pressured the quarterback a couple times. He's rarely in the pass rush, though. Most of his job is going to be run defense, and he's playing the run well. He's stuffing his run fit the way he's supposed to. And at this point, that's all you can really ask. I mean, he does. I mean, yeah, it's an easy run fit. It's just attack the gap in front of you, but he's doing his job. I can't argue with it.
I agree. I mean, keeping it simple for a guy like him is key. A young player with just so much size and athleticism. I think the more simple you make it, the more it can be used. I mean, you don't want to take a huge guy like that and ask him to do too many things. I think he's doing his job well, and it will be interesting mid-season to see him continue doing that same role because obviously he's going to get better on him. He has 2 weeks of film, and I think he's a guy that's going to keep getting better week in and week out. But he's just so massive, so quick that I think the key with him is just playing to his strengths. And I think they've done a decent job with that, not putting too much pressure on a young player and ask him to do too many things. Just go in there, wreak havoc.
Yeah, I think Hageman's in probably what I would probably call phase 2 of his development. Phase 1 last year was just trying to make him understand how to use his hands, how to use his massive size and strength and power to be effective. We saw flashes of it last year. I think phase 2 is more, let's get him to get that consistent effort down in and down out. Let's see him knock that guy back off the ball. And I think he's been doing that through the first 2 games. I would probably say phase 3 is going to be him really knowing how to disengage from blocks and to be in a position to make more impact plays, tackles for loss, stuffs, sacks, pressures, all that type of thing. I don't think he's reached that point yet. He may not get completely there by the end of the season, but I agree with Craig. I think we'll probably see steady progress as he gets there, and hopefully, if not this year, by the end of this year, then hopefully next season he'll put it all together and he'll be that sort of impact difference maker, so that when we're talking about previewing games next year, we'll be like, oh, how is there's no chance that Leo Collins or whoever is going to be able to block Hageman this week because he's just going to dominate him one-on-one. So he hasn't hit that point yet, but I think he's well on his way to getting there.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about it is he has had to endure the growing pains, and he's had his bad moments, and he's had some really bad moments, and then he's had good moments. But I think that's huge for him moving forward because he's got some key experience under his belt. He's a guy that doesn't have that cocky attitude. He's a guy that wants to learn and wants to get better. I think he's, as you said, steady is the word with him, and I think that's a good way to describe it is phase 2 and getting off those blocks. I mean, that is the next key step, and it's going to be a challenge this week. We'll be able to see if the guys are wearing those Velcro jerseys or if they're able to get off these blocks and stop the run against this offensive line.
All right, our next question from @MattStars is, are the third quarter issues on offense? Is it a small sample size or are teams making good adjustments?
It's definitely not a small sample size. This third quarter has been hurting this team for a long time. I don't know what the deal is. I don't.
I do think that it's a combination of both, though. It's the first 2 games for your head coach ever making third quarter adjustments. It's not going to be perfect, but let's see him in Dallas. Let's see him in Houston. If we see it as a recurring issue through the Washington and then the New Orleans game, then it might be something that we've got to just kind of suffer through as Falcons fans under Dan Quinn.
Yeah, and I thought week 1, the third quarter was atrocious. I thought last week it was just a bad third quarter. So it didn't get worse. It got a little better. But, I mean, third quarter, I don't know what it is, but just time and time again, the Hawks, the Falcons, these third quarters are killing me.
Well, yeah, I mean, but last week it was 21 points in the third, and this week it's like 7 points in the third. So
It was, yeah, week one was, whoa, what's going on? But last week it was just, I thought it was just a couple big plays that got by us. But the first week we saw that, hey, they completely like lost control of the game in the third quarter. But I thought this last week was just the big plays hurt you, and you were able to make adjustments by the fourth quarter. So that's all you can ask.
Yeah, I thought last week was most of their issues were just not executing on a couple of plays. But the thing I'll say is, the other team's coaches get paid too, guys. So the fact that this team isn't always ahead of the other team in terms of the third quarter adjustments isn't always necessarily a slight against the Falcons. It's just Chip Kelly gets paid $5 million a year to make third quarter adjustments. Based off of his salary, I hope he can make third quarter adjustments and out adjust teams and stuff like that. So it's a problem. It's been an issue for the Falcons for many years, but I think right now, as far as 2015 applies, we probably are talking a little bit more of a smaller sample size to get too judgmental on third quarter adjustments.
Yeah, and that week one, third quarter, I mean, to come out and throw a pick right away, I don't see that happening too much. And that one just got out of control.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Matt Stars asks another one. His is a scenario. It's 3rd and 1, fourth quarter, up by 3 points. What's the play call?
run it with the Marco on the fullback give.
I like that. It's interesting. The only team I've seen in short yardage situations pass the ball consistently over the last several years is the Patriots. I mean, everyone else, it's just they're going to run the ball. And third down makes me feel a little better with the Falcons because on fourth down, when it's 4th and 1, I think everyone knows we're going to run the ball. And I guess we'll say it's third down play, but what you don't do is you don't run it to the short side of the field, which they tried to do that against the Giants, and they ended up losing 5 yards on the 3rd and 1. It's ridiculous. There's no way you're running to the short side of the field in the NFL, bringing all your linemen around and finding a hole in that play. It's not going to happen. So I agree with Scott. I think that's a perfect play call that not many people see coming. But I don't like holding everyone. I don't like all that stuff because there's no possible way. I mean, Devontae Freeman, you saw how hard he had to fight for that one first down last week. He broke like 3 tackles just to pick it up, which I thought was one of the key plays of the game. I thought they're doing a better job on these third and short situations, but running the ball to the short side of the field, no. I think what Scott said, I think trying to pass the ball or anything but that. We've seen it too many times.
A play action wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, I've always been partial to the play action fake and hit the tight end in the flat on 3rd and short.
What do you think about shotgun versus not shotgun on those third downs?
Never shotgun. Because shotgun, you basically say, hey, if we do run it, you're going to easily stop us. And then on a pass, you're like, hey, it's going to go outside. It's not going to be an interior pass.
I think that's one of the things, I hate to bring up other seasons, but on these short yardage situations before, they would take out the fullback and just put one guy back there, just put Steven Jackson back there and try to hand it off. That's not going to work. I think having the fullback in there is key, and I think Patrick DeMarco is doing a good job. So I would like to see them. You don't necessarily have to just jumbo package it and pound it up there, but having a fullback on the short yard situation is something they need to do and something they are doing. So I think that's key.
Yeah, I would probably only use shotgun on 3rd and 1 if I was the Packers and I had Aaron Rodgers and a healthy Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb and all those guys, and Eddie Lacy was hurt, basically. Yeah. That would be the only sort of scenario where I think I would go shotgun and just say, okay, Aaron, do your thing, and let's spread the field and throw it. But other than that, yeah, I think you're right. You have to present you want the team to think you're going to run the ball if you're going to throw the ball, as opposed to we're just going to throw the ball and you guys know it's coming. So, yeah. All right. Another one from Matt Stars is it's a draft question. He says he wants 2 college players, one on offense and one on defense we could target. Why and in what round?
Man, I'm like not even halfway into my watch list, let alone like who's going to go in the first round, who's going to go in the second. I mean, a mid to late round guy that I would love is Jake Matthews' little brother, who plays center up at Texas A&M. He's that 6'2", 290-pound bowling ball you want in the middle of his zone scheme. He's a Matthews, so he can't be that awful as an offensive lineman. And I think if you have him and his brother, and then you have like Levitri right there at left guard, you can't really have that bad of a left side.
Yeah, I think guards. Sorry. Yeah, I think offensive line is the offensive position you want. Vidal Alexander is a guy from LSU that's a solid run blocking guard, real physical guy. As for defense, geez, I am so bad with college names, but I don't know. I'm impartial because I saw him play in high school, but I think a guy like Carl Lawson, I just want to see what he can do in the NFL. He's got so much strength. I know he had the bad knee injury last year, but he's one of the strongest players probably in the country right now, and he's so quick off the ball and just an absolute beast. So I'd like to see him with a good defensive system in the NFL and see what he could do. I feel like he's a quick guy that could possibly do well in a system like Quinn, and I think he's probably projected to be a late first round, early second, just with his injury history. So maybe he's a guy, depending on how that Auburn defense does or what they do this year, that we might be able to land.
On defense, I'd like to see Daddy Nicholas from Virginia Tech. Very good pass rusher. I think he'd be a good complement to Vic, and then you wouldn't have to worry about, hey, what happens if Vic's off the field or Schofield's off the field? You know, you're rotating all the different guys, and he could be that third guy in that rotation because he's a way better athlete than Bierman, and I don't want to see Bierman on the Falcons after this year. He was good yesterday. That might be his only good game for the entire season, but I'm not a fan of Bierman. He doesn't understand his run fits anymore. He's just, you can tell when a player's done sometimes, and he's at that point of done.
We didn't make it through a show without Scott throwing Corey Bierman on the bus. This might be the 1 week that we might get away with that.
I mean, I've said my bad things too, but this week I just had good play, great game. I got all the messages because I've said that he's not my favorite player, but he made a good play. I'll give everyone that this week.
Yeah, it's September, so any draft question basically is not going to, ask me a draft question in January. That's
an interesting question, though. I mean, I definitely think offensive line is what you want to look for. So we'll see.
If I was going to name 2 guys, these positions probably aren't pressing needs, but just because I think they're really good players. On defense, I would go Miles Jack, the linebacker from UCLA, played under Jeff Ulbrich. Can play all 3 linebacker spots in this defense. I think he would be an upgrade at all 3 linebacker spots in this defense. So you just draft him and figure out a role for him. He'll probably be a first-round pick. I think people have been projecting him as a top 15, possibly even top 10 pick. Offensively, I would go. I'm gonna pick a pick guy. I'm gonna pick James Conner. I know running back isn't a pressing need, but he's lost a little weight. He injured his knee. He might not play the rest of the season. That certainly won't help his draft stock. But since he's a running back, he probably wasn't going to get drafted higher in the second round anyway. So yeah, I would go with him. Yeah.
I will say this though, Aaron. How much better do you feel heading into this next draft than you did this year? I mean, just seeing some of the pieces we have. I mean, when I think about the draft this year, I'm like, all right, well, we need this, we need that. Last year, just like, oh my God, please, like, get someone.
Yeah, yeah. I feel a lot more confident they'll hit on the needs that they need to get, and I feel like even if they do draft somebody that isn't like the most pressing need, they'll get a good player, and it's just really about building talent because this team doesn't have a lot of depth right now, and it's just like just banging it out for like 2 or 3 years in the offseason, get 2 or 3 drafts under your belt, and all of a sudden now you're talking about having great depth. And if next year's draft is anything like this past year's draft, then I'm very confident about what this team can do in the offseason.
Wait, you mean that you would agree that Hans Dimitrov can work with a head coach who has a vision?
Well, we'll see about Thomas Dimitrov. There's, the rumors that he might not be back next year. So before
Lewis Land also said that the Falcons were going to take Shane Ray, number 8 overall, too.
Fair enough, but we'll see. All right. Jelani234 asks, after watching week 1 to week 2, have you seen any progression in the O-line?
A lot of progression in the O-line. But they were playing an offensive or a defensive line that's not anywhere close to as good.
Yeah.
They were blocking a lot better, especially Levitre. Levitre looks so much better this week than he did last.
Yeah, I thought Chester got blown up on that one play. I mean, when they miss, but I thought they're doing a formidable job, and I agree with Scott. I think Levitre is a guy that held his own real well last week, and I thought the O-line fought a lot harder. I know when Matt Ryan did get hit, it looked like they were more concerned. They were deep shotting the defense a little more after plays like that, pushing guys around. They just looked a little more physical, which is good, and I think they're starting to get a little bit of confidence.
Yeah. The O-line is probably the one area of the roster that I probably have the most trepidation with, just because I'm a Falcon fan and I've seen a lot of bad offensive line, so I'm always kind of waiting. Even when they have a good game, it's like, oh, that next week, it's going to be Charles Johnson. He's just going to destroy them, But it's
don't say that name.
Well, it's one of those things where Levitre had a little bit of troubles with Hankins. Understandably, Hankins is an underrated D tackle, but it wasn't like he got his butt kicked or anything like that. He just, a couple plays he couldn't handle his power. This week's going to be an interesting week. The Cowboys don't have that sort of dominant player up front, but they have some good players. So I feel like the offensive line is getting better, but there's always a little part of me that's always feels like there's just one bad game where they get their butts kicked right around the corner, but that's just probably the negative, pessimistic Falcon fan in me that always feels like that's on the verge of happening.
Well, Aaron, you talked about right around the corner. I think this Cowboys game is a huge one. This offensive line needs to take another step forward because you've got the Houston Texans coming to town the next week, and that is quite a defensive line. So this is a big week. It's not a big week matchup-wise, but they need to keep making progress because they have a big challenge waiting for them back in Atlanta.
Yeah, because they'll get Clowney and Wolfork and the good old defensive MVP, J.J. Watt.
Yes.
It's going to be fun, guys.
No.
I'm just happy they don't have to play both J.J. Watt and Justin Houston in the same, season ever.
True.
Yeah. Not looking forward to that. Well, I'll say the one thing. Levitre did do well against Wilfork many, many years ago in Buffalo. Hopefully he can sort of resurrect that part of his career for that game, and we'll just have to worry about J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney.
I'm more worried about Person on this line. The dude can't snap the ball. If you can't snap the ball, why the hell are you playing center?
Yeah. I was trying to think of another guy. I think the Cowboys had a guy a couple of years ago, Phil Costa, that couldn't snap the ball, and he didn't last very long.
Andre Garrod had some issues too, but I mean, I can't name one center that doesn't know how to snap in the league outside of Mike Person.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody. All right. Craig Phillips at sniper_4_life asks, do we go 8-0 to start off the season?
I hope so. I don't think so, but I hope so. That'd be awesome. I still see losses to Houston. I could see a loss to the Saints, even though they've been playing atrociously. That's the trap game of all trap games. And then San Francisco. Well, no, San Francisco's the ninth game, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, like Dallas, I think that should be a win. Washington should be a win. Tennessee, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, those should all be wins. Houston is the one game that I'm like, yeah, we're probably going to see the Falcons lose that week.
I think Houston's a big game too. You come off your first big road trip of the year, and you face a defensive line that is leaps and bounds behind anything you've looked at so far, and not even just their size and athleticism, but their experience against offensive line that is still growing. It's just going to be a tough game. It's probably going to be an ugly game. They're going to be in that backfield a lot, so I think that's the big game. But I still see the Falcons getting off to a strong start. I mean, the schedule definitely favors them, and as long as they are healthy going into all the division games, the back end of the schedule, I really don't care how well they do right now, because they're going to have a strong second half of the season no matter what. So, I mean, we all want to start 8-0, but I mean, they don't play a division game until so late. So I'm just more focused on when you've got all the Carolina, the Saints, and the Tampa Bay loading that back of the schedule.
I mean, if you start 8-0, it does make the playoffs almost a lock. They do match up well with the Niners. They do match up well with the Colts, the Vikings. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying the Falcons will go 16-0 based on their schedule. I'm saying the Falcons could legitimately go 13-3 this year because of how weak and soft the schedule looks right now. There's one team that looks scary, and it's Houston. The rest of them are, Dallas is 2-0, but they've had a lot of issues. Houston's maybe 0-2, but they've got the talent to come back from that. I don't see Washington as a good team because Cousins is the quarterback. If New Orleans doesn't have Breeze in October, I mean, they're done. If they don't have Breeze for the next 4 weeks, I could see them starting 0-6 and then just packing it in for Goff.
I think 8-0 looks more feasible. You know, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago and said, well, the Falcons start the season 8-0, I probably would have slapped you in the face because I thought you were a crazy person. But now it does look at least, semi-realistic. I don't think the Falcons will start 8-0. I think at some point they're going to slip up in a game. I do agree with what you guys say. I think moving forward, the Texans are probably their biggest test coming up. And then that short week against the Saints. I mean, I don't. They don't feel like an 8-0 team. Like they don't feel like that 2012 team that could just go out and just throw the ball 65% of the time to Tony Gonzalez and Julio Jones and Roddy White and just put up points on everybody and get a bunch of turnovers on the back end on defense and score more points. But if Julio keeps doing what he's been doing, they're going to be hard to beat. So I don't think they'll go 8-0. They'll probably end up going 6-2 or something like that. They'll slip up against somebody, but it's certainly more realistic now than it looked a month ago.
And if you would have told me a month ago they'd start 6-2, I would have been like, I'll take that all day.
Yeah, ditto. I think I had them starting like 5-3 or something like that. All right. Evan Birchfield basically asking us a similar question. Seeing our remaining schedule at 2-0, what's your updated record projection?
This could be a 13-3 team. It really could. if they keep playing like this and they stay healthy, I mean, we could be looking at another. They may not be as good as the 2012 team, but probably a 2010 team. Not built for the playoffs, but built for the regular season to win a lot of games. And yeah, it's a coach's first year, but hell, people would love it if Dan Quinn could go 13-3 in his first year.
Yeah, it's hard for me to even say 13-3, but honestly, the schedule's not good. And as I said, I mean, the teams are facing, I don't see them offensively matching up well against the Falcons defense, which is crazy to say. I mean, last year you would have said, oh, the Falcons defense, it doesn't match up well against them, but none of these teams are really running the ball well. They don't have any receiver that's going to give us trouble, which has happened in the past. I think defensively we hold our own, and that's huge. If you have consistent defense each week, you can finish 13-3 against these average to bad teams. So I think that's a good number right there.
Especially when your run defense goes from, I think it was like third to last in the league, and now it's 8th or 9th.
Yeah, I mean, they might be waiting for the Falcons defense to have that bad game, but I mean, they aren't going against Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers this year. I mean, these offenses they're going against, I think Carolina might be one of the only ones that's really going to give you trouble with Cam Newton, maybe able to do some crazy plays and beat you on the run and kind of throw you out of your normal routine. But everyone else, I just don't see any offense that really scares me.
Yeah, I look at the Colts and the Vikings. That I know they haven't started the season as strong. Probably by the time we get to them after the bye week, that you would probably think they should be starting to get click and get their offense together. Adrian Peterson does scare me, but he's about the only one. Yeah, I would probably go with originally I had 9-7 going into the season. I'd probably change it to 11-5 just because I think at some point they're going to lose some games. Every team always loses a couple of games here and there that they probably should have won. So I don't feel like the Falcons will probably get to 13-3, but I do agree that it's certainly possible if they get all the breaks that they're supposed to get, then it's certainly feasible now. But I'll stick with 11-5 just because I think the Texans D-line will give them trouble. They always seem to sort of not play great against division opponents, so the Panthers could steal one, the Saints could steal one. And again, I think the Colts and the Vikings, probably by the time we get to week 11, week 12, should be clicking and be a more formidable matchup than they look right now. But, yeah, it's 11-5. All right. Evan Birchfield asks another one. Seeing reports of the Falcons might be interested again in Montee Ball. Good or bad idea?
I think it's a good idea. I think he's better than Teron Ward. And like I always say, if you can upgrade your third-string guy to be a former first-string guy, it's probably a good idea. Unless that guy is like Terrell Owens, you're probably not going to be screwed.
I agree. I think it's a good idea too. Montee Ball, a lot of experience, played in a potent offense in Denver. I think he has a lot of experience and can bring something to the table.
Watching Montee Ball at Denver, it looked like they kind of soured on him because he wasn't playing with the sort of burst and vision that they were expecting when they drafted him. But I don't think it's a bad idea. Why not add another body, a young guy that's a low risk, high reward sort of player? So yeah, it's a good idea. I wouldn't sit here if we signed him and be like, oh, Montee Ball's gonna be our starting running back by week 6 or something like that, and terrorizing opposing defenses. But if he's just a depth guy that you kind of hope can be a reclamation project here in Atlanta, why not?
Can he be more than Teron Ward? If the answer is yes, yes, I am.
There you go.
And you cut Bryce Harris.
Tyler Columbus.
I would still keep Tyler Columbus over Bryce Harris. I don't think you realize just how bad Harris was.
I think other than that one game against OC, he wasn't that bad.
Trust me, he was that bad.
No comment.
When the Saints cut him from their offensive line, he was that bad.
Okay. All right. We'll see. All right. That'll be something we'll argue about next offseason. At Scott Emmanuel 15 asks, how far do you think the Falcons will make it in the playoffs this year? And a prediction for the final score of the Dallas game Sunday.
They will lose in the divisional round even if they host a game because they're not ready for the playoffs. Prediction for the Dallas game, I think the Falcons should win it pretty easily as long as they don't screw up. I'm going to say 28-17. Falcons.
I think the Falcons split in the playoffs. They definitely get the win in the first round. I think Matty Ice gets his second win. As for the Cowboys game, go with 30-17.
Okay. I had them going into the season winning in the first round of the playoffs and losing in the second round. I'll stick with that prediction. I think I had them beating the Vikings in the first round and then losing to the Seahawks in the second round. So I'm going to go with that. You know, if you want to sub in different teams now, then go ahead. Prediction for this week's game, I'll go with the Falcons 24, Dallas 20. All right. At Southern Boy J asks, now that we have news on the Falcons possibly playing Matt Castle, do you think we'll dominate the Cowboys?
I mean, Brandon Whedon didn't make you think that enough. I think whether it's Castle or Whedon, the Falcons should win.
Go ahead, Craig. I'm sorry.
I was say, as a Chiefs fan, I think I like our chances against Matt Castle.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think it really matters who the quarterback is, because I think ultimately if Dallas wants to win this game, they're just going to run the ball. You know, they could be putting T.J. Yates back there, and if they can run the ball, then it doesn't really matter. So, yeah, I don't think Castle's going to bring anything different than Whedon is going to bring to the occasion. I don't even know if Castle's going to be active this week. I'm assuming they're just bringing him in to be a body. So, yeah.
Yeah, if we lose to Matt Castle, it's going to be a long season.
There you go. We won't be getting playoff questions next week. I can guarantee you that. I think our last one comes from Smorgasborg9. He asks, is Roddy White done or just coverage dictating only one passer on his way?
I think it's a combination of coverage and Roddy White not being the guy he used to be. He's not going to get those 100-yard, 8-catch games anymore. He doesn't have to. He's not that spot in the offense anymore.
It's definitely the fourth quarter of his career, but it was interesting. I kept watching to see if they're going to go his way, and I remember there was one play on the Falcons' last drive where he basically just ran a clear route to clear up Hankerson. It ended up working, but he didn't even turn around for the ball. Like, he basically just took the defender out of the play and got pushed out of bounds, and it was weird to see for me because he still has it, but for him just to run a play where he's not even an option on the play, I thought that was kind of strange. But I think you got to think something was going on. I mean, maybe he got banged up a little bit that first week and just wasn't going to be an integral part of last week's game plan. I still think he's an effective player. I think he's a guy that can win those matchups in the red zone, but there's no denying that he's playing a lesser role in the offense this year.
Yeah, I think I declared Roddy done in the summer, but I'm not going to go that far now. I think his issue is he's going to struggle to separate from good corners, and Prince Amukamara is a good corner, probably one of the 20 best corners in the NFL. Against bad corners, Roddy can win, but against a good guy like Amukamara, then he's going to struggle. So it'll be interesting to see him in this upcoming week, because I think he'll see Brandon Carr this week. When Brandon Carr is good, he's good, but when he hasn't been very good in Dallas, I think Kareem Jackson is Houston's left corner. I don't know if D'Angelo Hall's back or Chris Culliver's playing the left spot in Washington. So he's facing a decent level of competition these upcoming weeks. So I guess, you'll have a more definitive answer in 3 weeks. If he can, win some of those matchups, then he's not done. But if he only has 1 or 2 targets, in each of the upcoming games, then maybe he is done. But we don't know that answer quite yet.
He could have also just had an off day where he was like, man, I'm not getting the ball thrown to me. And at a certain point, he's just like, man, what's the point?
Yeah, historically, he hasn't played great against the Giants that I can think of. Or at least when I think back to that 2011 playoff game, that was a pretty rough performance for him back then. So maybe it's just something about playing in that stadium that he doesn't like the air or something. All right, guys. That is all we have for you this week. Craig, we appreciate you coming on, giving us your time. Go ahead and plug all the things that you have coming up in the next week or so.
Oh, man. We've got basketball starting up. I can't believe it. We've got Hawks training camp coming up. But we're talking football, high school football. You guys, every Friday night in the state of Georgia, we do a live scoring app. We've got the playoff picture starting to unfold. We've got some great games. This week, if you go to scoreatl.com, we'll be streaming the Roswell-Milton game. This has been selected one of the top 100 rivalries in the country. And Roswell's for real this year. They've got some real talent. So high school football fans, it's the Falcons high school game of the week. Go to ScoreATL, follow me on Twitter. We'll be tweeting it out, and we will have live scores from all 200 high school football games this week.
There you go. Craig is at Craig Savior Jr. on Twitter. And before we leave you, Craig, how's your dad doing?
He's doing great. He was in Orlando this week, so this is how I know he's doing better. Is he hasn't called me this week, so I know. People are like, are you sure he's better this time? Like, well, I've only talked to him like twice last month, so yeah, he's a lot better. But he's getting ready to come back for NBA season. Everything worked out. It was looking really grim in June. Not many options left. He had one more chance, which was this crazy 2-week chemo treatment, and it worked. So he's all set. And my dad has done crazy things. He's ran with the bulls. He's done bungee jumping. He skydived. The first time he ever skydived actually was for a shoot, and this was way back. He did it without a tandem. They wanted to do some shoot. They made him jump out of an airplane with just a parachute, no tandem. So he's done fearless things, but one thing he hasn't done is he's never been to South America. So he has his eyes set on the Olympics in Rio this year, wants to cover Team USA. So that's really what's been driving him the whole time, and hopefully he'll be able to check that off his bucket list and get to South America.
I hope your dad's able to do that too.
It's great to hear, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, those Olympics here are it's gonna be crazy. I mean, when they were in London, those opening ceremonies, they did the whole royal family and all their music history. Brazil, that's just gonna be a parade. I mean, that opening ceremony, that's gonna be one of the biggest parties I think in my life. So whether the Sager family's there or not, I'm looking forward to this summer. That makes football off season a lot better when you got the Olympics going on. So God bless.
I'll agree with that completely.
All right, folks, that is our show this week. We'll be back next week to talk about the Falcons' win over the Dallas Cowboys and preview their matchup against the Houston J.J. Watts.